Hey everyone, welcome back to another video, but don't forget subscribe in channel and leave your like. Two sneaky good NFL free agents Seahawks need to sign. Should the Seattle Seahawks trade standout wide receiver DK Metcalf? Could it help the team plug holes that can't be filled in free agency? Those questions linger, but here are two sneaky good free agents the Seahawks need to sign. Coming off a 10-7 season where the playoffs didn't materialize, the Seahawks seem to have a decent roster heading into 2025. The problem for the team getting over the top lies in the trenches on both sides of the football. Mike Macdonald said he believes the Seahawks can make important strides in the offseason, according to Seahawks.com. This is an opportunity to become the team we want to be. But at over $11.3 million over the cap, the Seahawks need to be creative. Forget adding offensive tackle Ronnie Stanley. Too expensive. The same applies to defensive tackles Milton Williams and Osa Odighizuwa. But the Seahawks might be able to finagle a way to get Robinson. He's ranked at number 17 for Pro Football Focus. He won't be cheap, but he could be a great addition. Robinson was part of a Jaguars team that had a dismal start to 2024, PFF wrote. But individually, he was a reliable option at left tackle before being acquired by the Vikings at the trade deadline. His 95.1 pass blocking efficiency rating this regular season was the worst mark of his career. But if anything, that's a testament to his play over the past 4 years. Robinson would fit nicely in offensive coordinator Clint Kubiak's plan to build a stronger infrastructure around quarterback Geno Smith, according to Seahawks.com. Excited for Kubiak to work with our players, Macdonald said. As a coach, just the scheme expertise, this guy has been around the game for a long time. And well documented with his family and have so much respect for his brothers and for his father, Gary Kubiak. I worked with him in 2014, but the passion for the game, the scheme expertise, the track record with the quarterback. Guys have played at a really high level every stop that he's been. The evolution of the scheme, too. And being able to fit it to your personnel, Clint has a really great vision for where he wants our offense to go. It was very clear with the personnel we have on our roster. We'll talk about it as we go here, but I definitely believe that aligns with how we want to rock. The Seahawks might already have their own Taysom Hill on the roster. The Seattle Seahawks' new offensive coordinator, Clint Kubiak, comes to the Pacific Northwest after a stint with the New Orleans Saints. While in the Big Easy, Kubiak made good use of Taysom Hill, the do-it-all QB/WR/TE/TD maker. Hill only played 8 games in 2024 but still tallied 6 TDs and 465 total yards from scrimmage. In his 8-year career, Hill has thrown for 2,369 yards with 11 TDs to 9 INTs. He has 2,437 yards rushing with 33 rushing TDs, throw in another 943 yards receiving with 11 TDs, and you really start to see Hill's value as a versatile offensive weapon. Despite a torn ACL late in the season, some are still wondering if he would be a fit in Seattle if New Orleans decides to move on from him at 34 years old. But what if the Seahawks already have Taysom Hill at home? Enter John Reese Plumlee, the former college QB turned NFL WR who was picked up by the Seahawks in November 2024 and was signed to the active roster in January 2025. Despite initially being listed as a quarterback, Plumlee was primarily a wide receiver on the practice squad. He's not quite as big as Taysom Hill, standing 6 feet 0 inches 200 pounds versus 6 feet 2 inches 221 pounds, yet that doesn't mean that Plumlee is any less capable of impacting the game in multiple ways. Plumlee played center field on the baseball teams at Ole Miss to the University of Central Florida along with his spot on the football team. He had a pretty decent 2023 baseball season at UCF, hitting .286 with 10 home runs and 18 stolen bases, showing off his athleticism. We'll get back to that. Back on the gridiron, Plumlee threw for 5,838 yards with 34 TDs and 19 INTs in his college career. As a rusher, that's where the athleticism really showed up, with 2,556 rushing yards and 28 TDs. That included a 1,000-yard season with 12 TDs as a freshman against the best of the best in the SEC. Plumlee's last season at Ole Miss saw him primarily lined up as a WR, and he gained 201 yards through the air that season. Not a huge amount, but considering that's his current position with the Seahawks, we can assume that he's progressed in that area. Plumlee was in training camp with the Pittsburgh Steelers last year, and they lined him up at QB, WR, and kick returner. Just look at some of these highlights, the dude is fast. Makes sense since he ran a 4.54-second 40 at his pro day. With the murky future of Tyler Lockett and Dareke Young, Seattle's WR core could use an infusion of talent. Based on Plumlee's past performance, strictly playing him at WR may be a misuse of his talents. Line him up in the backfield, let him run routes, throw some double passes, why not get crazy with it? Let's see what Clint Kubiak can do with the Seahawks' own version of a Swiss Army knife. Seattle Seahawks' top free agent target has become abundantly clear. The seemingly inevitable march to a Kansas City Chiefs three-peat was at all of our doorsteps. It would mean another victory parade and more interviews with Travis Kelce and Jake the insurance guy. It would have meant the extension of their dynasty to an almost untouchable level. Those dreams were all fractured, battered, and buried on Super Sunday in New Orleans. The Philadelphia Eagles did what the entire league has been trying to do for the last 1,094 days, wrangle an all-time great in Patrick Mahomes and his Chiefs. How did they do it? Jalen Hurts was sensational, scoring thrice and winning MVP of the game. That must feel like a bit of vindication to him after a year of criticism and skepticism about his impact and abilities. You could argue that the mere presence of Saquon Barkley changed the complexion of this clash. He tore it up all year, and it felt like KC sold out to do everything it could to make sure that Sackwads couldn't beat them. The real secret weapon? The Eagles' monstrous lineup is on the defensive front. This group of salty and ferocious behemoths made their imprint in the history of the game by harassing Mahomes from the word go. The craziest part? Philly did not blitz. They just rushed four guys the entire game, stressing and overwhelming the KC offense to the tune of 6 sacks, 6 TFLs, a 38.1% pressure rate, and 2 interceptions. It was a 3-possession game once the dust settled. It felt like everything the Ravens' defense had been last year. What does that mean for the Seattle Seahawks? The Seahawks just this past year invested a top 20 draft pick into DT, Byron Murphy II. Before that, they shelled out second and fourth round picks, along with a $65 million contract for D. Leonard Williams. So why would they go out and make another substantive investment in the defensive front? Ask Andy Reid. Ask Brittany Mahomes. Ask Taylor Swift and Priest Holmes while you're at it. The Seahawks may feel that they are not far off from contention with the current team. If that's so, recruiting and signing Osa Odighizuwa would be a big swing. Adding the only interior defensive lineman in PFF's top 30 free agents, Pro Football Focus is a subscription-based website, list would swing for an Eagles-type defensive line rotation. Can you imagine the nastiness and chaos that would presumably be sown by Big Cat, BMII, Odighizuwa, and maybe even junior-year contributions from Cam Young and Mike Morris? Add a big ol' run stuffer to the mix and you've got a panoply of playmakers to push the pocket on the league's best passers. Odighizuwa is very familiar with Seahawks defensive coordinator, Aiden Durde. Durde coached him in Dallas and utilized his skill set as an effective rotational pass-rushing defensive tackle. O ranked in the top 5 for both QB hurries and QB hits in 2024. The most important stat to know is that he was top 3 at his position in total pressures this past season for the Cowboys. Importing that kind of ability makes it easy to picture an elite defense in the Pacific Northwest again. It would also be banking on continued development instead of breaking the bank for guys like Khalil Mack, Myles Garrett, or even Milton Williams, after his Super Bowl performance. Some will want Seattle to spend all it can on improving the offensive line this offseason. Totally understandable and relatable to feel that way after seeing Seattle quarterbacks, Geno Smith ride along with Sam Howell, maneuvering a crumbling pocket every week. If John Schneider grasps tight to his belief that guards are overpaid, then making a move like this to develop a superpower on the Seahawks roster could be enticing. And you, fan? Do you think about Odighizuwa's situation? Write in the comments.